Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
As you guys know, I rarely do self-promotion, so I was told to put a little tidbit in here. For those of you who want more content in a different format, go to Patreon. Look for Hero Paranormal, I'm there. Or go to heroparanormal.com, I'm there. Get more out of Hero Paranormal. Blast off on another episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you an epic episode today. We have someone who I've been dying to get on the podcast for quite some time, and the reason I have been so needful of getting him on the podcast is he is someone who I had the blessing of meeting. He is someone whose aura is absolutely stunning, and I'm not really a new agey kind of guy. You know, I don't buy into all this new age stuff as much as others. However, a shift happened when I met this individual, and he was a very obvious master, a very obvious intellectual who was ascending the spiritual ladder of life, or who has ascended to a degree that impressed me. We are talking about none other than Alan Steinfeld. He is an author, an expert of many, many things. We are going to discuss the preparing for the new realities of extraterrestrial existence. His amazing book is worth purchasing. I purchased it and I love it. It's Making Contact. And what Alan is going to delve into is some pretty deep stuff. He is close friends with all of the leading minds in the field: Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, John E. Mack, Daryl Anka, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron. The list goes on and on. And Alan curates and frames this groundbreaking work with his 30 years of research and experience. He maintains that they are already here. Making Contact presents multiple perspectives on a fact that can no longer be denied. UFOs and their occupants are visiting our planet. The government's acknowledgement in 2017 still leaves us with unanswered questions as to who, what, and why. But one thing we can't deny is it is gaining more traction, at least in the mainstream media. And why the shift? Reading from his book, the question is, why does it seem that making contact or being in the presence of extraterrestrial or higher consciousness beings so severely shifts our awareness into a dreamlike state? For starters, just seeing a UFO can cause cognitive dissonance. Psychological disassociation occurs when we see an object that is not supposed to do the things it does. Hover in midair with no sound, zoom off at incredible speeds, or pop in and out of space. That alone shatters our sense of what we think is real and actual. This is going to be an epic, epic conversation. Alan Steinfeld is someone whose presence in a room just lights up the room. I can verify this because he is somebody who absolutely insists on enjoying life moment to moment. He insists on getting the word out. And, you know, at least his job for all of us appears to be overcoming the cultural norms. He is, in fact, preparing the new realities of extraterrestrial existence. Alan Steinfeld, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast. How you doing today, Alan?
Good. So great to be here. I know we've been planning this for a while, and now it's happening, so thanks, Ryan.
It's truly a blessing. And, you know, I kind of went into this as the introduction. I went into the fact that I am someone that usually doesn't feed into this whole, new age, belief in ascended masters, people who really have, that something, that spark, that divinity. And I had the blessing of meeting you in Sedona at a very unique gathering that Suzanne put on. And you have that, and I don't know what to call that, but you have that. You walk into a room and the whole room lights up. You sold me your book, and I think that it really goes into, how humanity must wake up to this new reality. What led you to along this path and to share such amazing work with the public?
Oh, thanks, Ryan, for all those kind words. I always have to admit I felt different than the rest of the people around me. From my family, very nice people, honest, hardworking people, but, just interested in earthly things. And I was always looking up at the stars. I was always looking out and around and for new possibilities and adventures and travel and things that excited me. I couldn't fit into the normal everyday world. You go to school, you get a job, have a family, and all that's great. For people who love that and want to do that, I think that's great because we all have different experiences here. But I always was interested in something different, now for something completely different, as Monty Python used to say. But I always wanted to kind of look at the mysteries, and I'm still looking at the mysteries because they're still interesting for me, because there is something about existence that people don't tell you. And maybe that's the aura you're talking about, is my investigations into the unknown and the unknowable. So that's been my life, I guess. My curiosity has led me around the world and collected a great library of knowledge, met great teachers, done incredible workshops, and the key to it all is experience. It's only knowledge until you've had the experience, and when you have the experience, it becomes wisdom. So that's what people are looking for, the wisdom of these new possibilities. You can learn everything you want from teachers and books, but then something happens when you're prepared for, and sometimes you're not prepared, for the unknown, for, let's say, seeing a UFO or having an out-of-body experience or sleeping in a haunted house, which I've done. It's like there's other levels of reality here that you don't hear about in school or on television or, I don't know, sometimes even from friends. You have to experience it and then find a reference somewhere for your experience or just talk about it. And that's what I've always done, wanted to talk about what's happened to me, what I'm aware of that I think other people could be aware of. And, of course, we're waking up into a new time where more and more people are aware of these other levels of reality.
That is so true. There's more and more. And I recall, in your book, it really does seem that a lot of the youth around the world, they are becoming more aware of this. The world of materialism and consumerism are not the callings that people should be following. And your worth should not be dependent on how much you have in the bank or what you're able to spend on some shoes, some nice clothes, or some jewelry. And I really, most importantly, I think that you recognize this situation and you are really getting the word out to people, but you're doing so in a way that is very unique. And I want to thank you for that. And I also want to point out that something you say in the book as well is aliens make us more human. Can you go into explaining that a little bit for our listeners?
Yeah, I'm just curious. What is unique about what I'm saying? I'm just curious your perspective on that.
My perspective is that you are really talking about a new reality, a shift, and it's really an awakening, and that humanity needs to wake up to a new reality that is that we are not here by ourselves. And I love how you so poignantly put in your book that witnessing an unidentified aerial phenomena, as they call it now, and I really appreciate that you explain the difference between a UFO and a UAP. And it's not just the government shift in verbiage, but the fact that it's not just an object in the sky. It really is a phenomena. And, this awakens our consciousness. This can create things within us that were not present before some of these visualizations of these cosmic entities in our ether.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that, reflection. And I trying in the book and in my lectures, I'm trying to say this is, yes, not just about objects in the sky. It's not just about visitors from another planet, and it may be those things, but it is the whole rearrangement of what we think reality is. So, we haven't been taught that other beings are here and they could walk through walls, they can appear in your bedroom at night. I mean, just imagine you've locked the doors, you're tired, you're going to bed, maybe you're alone, and suddenly, something's at the foot of your bed. That is such a wake-up call. That is such a freaky experience that we have to prepare ourselves for these unknown realities, because I don't think they're here to harm us. I think they are living in a different level of existence, and they're not greater than us. They're equal to us on, I would say, a soul level, but we have to get used to the fact that reality is not what we've been conditioned to think it is. It's so much bigger. We've been living in a flatland, and what it really is, what's really going on is multiple dimensions are overlaid, and it's in our awareness. We get flashes of these other levels of reality all the time. You get like a psychic vision. The other day, I'm traveling a little bit, and I just had this flash of this bookshelf in my apartment, and it's like, I don't know. I said, why did I think of that? And then my assistant calls me and said, guess what? Your bookshelf fell down. So it's like, I don't know. It's just one example of the mind, and this is part of what expands us in relationship to the other, is non-local. I think our minds are actually the extraterrestrial presence that we're looking for. It's not an evolution, as science says, of primitive apes evolving greater intelligence. I mean, yes, I'm not denying evolution, but there's another aspect where we are a fractal component of the great intelligence, whatever you want to call that great intelligence. And consciousness is kind of splintered out into each one of us, but we're all part of a unity of awareness. That's one way. So that's been my perspective. And when we meet the others, whether they're ETs, interdimensional, ascended masters, whatever you want to call them, they are somehow an aspect of this consciousness. And like I said, they're not better or greater than us. They may be more intelligent, they may be more involved, but in us is the core essence that makes us equal to all that, because we are consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes great sense. And with the government coming out now and the Nimitz, a lot of the amazing disclosure that is taking place, even though it's drop by drop, I believe that even the mainstream is noticing that there is more to this reality than this three-dimensional reality that most people live in. And, just that seems to be a tap on the shoulder from the other side, at least in, watching broadcasts that talk about this. There's many mainstream media channels that are now talking about this. And this is something that you've been involved with and talking about for a long time. It's been a hard road, hasn't it?
It has. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because tomorrow, June 2nd, I'm doing a special broadcast series with some of the inside disclosure people such as Danny Sheehan. Do you know who Danny Sheehan is?
Okay, yeah.
He's legal counsel for Luis Elizondo, one of the forerunners of the disclosure movement. He was also legal counsel for John Mack at Harvard when John Mack said there are people having abduction experiences, and he wrote a book about it, and Harvard said you can't say that and be a professor here. And so Danny Sheehan defended John in a free speech sort of in-house Harvard case and won that case. And so he's going to be talking about, Danny Sheehan's going to be talking about where we are in disclosure with the government insiders, along with Steve Bassett, who's a Washington lobbyist for the truth about UFO disclosure, and Robert Salas, who was a captain, Air Force captain, who witnessed a UFO over a nuclear missile silo in Montana that shut off the nuclear codes, and the whole base freaked out and was reported. And he's going to be talking about his experience, and that was just brought up in the recent congressional hearings by Representative Gallagher asking the UAP task force, have you heard about this UFOs over nuclear missile silos? And the task force, who's been hired to investigate this, said, no, we've never heard of that. So I'm going to get Robert Salas' response to this kind of denial of government, what the government really knows, because it is all coming out. So I say let them deny it as much as they want, and they're kind of putting themselves in a pigeonholing themselves, because when the evidence comes out, it'll be seen that it's obvious that there's been some level of untruth about what they've been telling us. I mean, many levels. And so we're getting close to, I would say, the finish line here. I mean, it's 75 years of government denial since Roswell. Roswell was real. I mean, I know people who've been there, who've had talked about the reverse engineering of these craft. If you read The Day After Roswell by Colonel Corso, he said a lot of the modern components that have gone into our computer technology came out of reverse engineering these crash saucers. So the microchip, for one, and other compounds and kind of I would say technological developments. So anyway, we've been on this kind of inside story of how we've been influenced by these visitations, but it's never come out. The government has never said, yes, we're not alone in the universe, and that's the big headline that people like Linda Moulton Howe are waiting for. They're working really hard for. We're not alone in the universe. And why does that have to be such a big secret? I mean, I don't get it. I don't get what's wrong with the A word, the alien word, or if they are aliens, or extraterrestrial. Why can that not be known? I mean, that's the biggest mystery of all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? Why is that not being said? It's dumbfounding why we're being kept in the dark. I mean, I don't understand it myself. I mean, I have ideas, I have theories like, it's not so much about the extraterrestrials, it's more about corporate monopolies. Like, obviously, these craft, wherever they're from, are not filling up their gas tank to get here. And so whatever technology they have on that level, I don't think we have access to that yet. But when that comes out, when you can just have a little box in your house or apartment, you plug all your electrical needs into, and you have it running in your car. I mean, just think of how that will change the world, how we'll be able to, cultivate the deserts, how food production will increase. We won't be enslaved to our energy needs. Free energy is something that will free us from the past, free us from wars, enslavement. I mean, all the things that have run out this economy will need a whole rearrangement. And people will have a chance to live for the reason they really incarnated here. You know what that is? I'm asking you what you think it is. I'm not saying I have the answer, but what do you think we've incarnated into these bodies for?
That is such a big question, and one that I struggle with a lot, and I just don't know. Is it just trying to overcome ourselves and get past the fact that we are more than this meat vessel that we occupy and the surroundings that we think we see? I do think that your point about energy, and in your book you discuss 0 point energy. I think
Yeah.
these are very important points, Alan. And I love a quote in your book, if I may read it.
Yes, please.
It says, we may say we want to see them. We may even beg them to come, but actual contact is apocalyptic. The future has begun." And that is so poetic, but so true, because as you said, corporate America, the reality of what we see in the stock market, and the things we can feel and touch, and that will all disappear when we have, like you said, a little box in our home that has 1/100th of the capacity of these things we are seeing in the sky, that are able to bend space and time and energize in ways that are beyond our imagination.
Exactly. I mean, apocalyptic is not a negative thing either. It means a total transformation. It's. I'll read you the. It is an ultimate destiny of the world. It's the total change that will bring us, like I'm saying, into this new reality, as you've quoted. That the real reason, this is where I was getting at, of incarnation is not to be confounded by it, but is to do exactly what you're doing, Ryan, is creating. We're here to create. We're here to add to the unknown. We're here to make known the unknown. So all this drama and all this is about how we're going to evolve creation with, like, what you're doing now. You're creating your enjoyment. You're asking questions. You're investigating. You're expanding your mind. That's a grand purpose for being here, and that adds to other people's experience, adds to yours, adds to mine, and so you're pushing the envelope of creation by doing just this.
And, Alan, I mean, honestly, have beautifully dressed this point in your book. It is such a wonderful literal feat that you've created here. And the world, yeah, I mean, the world seems to be kind of a broken place. It's getting better, and it kind of has a darkness about it. And you're, in my opinion, shining a light that is you, and you're healing the broken world through this. If it's okay, I'd like to read another paragraph out of your book that's so.
Well, what can you before you do that? I
Yeah.
just want to say, because I didn't finish my point
Oh,
about
yes.
what's coming up tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, please do.
June 2nd is the series I'm calling the Making Contact series, 5 episodes, and you can go to makingcontactseries.com. Tomorrow we have a deep dive disclosure with Danny Sheehan, Steve Bassett, and Robert Salas, Robert Salas, and it goes the next 4 Thursdays in June, makingcontactseries.com, and it's really a reflection of the book. So, yeah, read that quote, and thank you for saying it's literary, because I was a literature major in college, and I read the great writers in England, of James Joyce, Shakespeare, and they're not just writing something, they're communicating deep messages, and that's what I've tried to do in this book. So, yeah, and I loved all the quotes that I put in there, because they remind me of my mission. So, yeah, which is the quote you want to read?
There's a couple, and I also want, before we forget, to also tell listeners where they can go to New Realities. Can you explain what you're doing there and how they can take part in what you're doing?
Right. There's newrealities.com is a website, but I put a lot of my energy into my YouTube channel. So that's youtube.com/newrealities, where each week I interview cutting-edge guests about shifting the paradigm of what's possible. That's why I'm doing this Making Contact series, June 2nd, the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd throughout June, where I'm going to be talking to people who I really value for their cutting-edge thinking, people like Linda Moulton Howe and Whitley Strieber, two of the deepest thinkers in this field, and that's what I love about all this. So, yes.
Beautiful stuff happening, and just so listeners are aware, that is happening tomorrow, so definitely get on that. And getting back to the book, there's so many quotes, and it is an essential handbook in preparing to embrace the most exalting moment in human history, contacting the cosmic other. The amazing, just the way you put this, and it says, in a philosophical sense, extracelestials can be called luminous, non-corporeal beings. In their non-material form, they have the ability to come and go without technological structures. And that is so true. As you said, they can walk through walls, they can appear, they can disappear. They can do things that are just mind-blowing. And a lot of this, I believe, is really feeding into this consciousness study that is coming to the forefront of science. And you're there.
Right. Well, I have to just also acknowledge, I think, that each chapter in this book is written by a different, I would say, expert in the field. I think that chapter that you're reading from is chapter 3. That's by doctors J.J. and Desiree Hertog, who are good friends, and they've studied this phenomena for, last 40 years. And every chapter has a different perspective. And I take this approach because no one has the whole story. No one really knows, and that includes the government for sure, and even contactees, what this whole thing is about. It is so complex and so multifaceted and, like you said, multidimensional that we have to rise to the occasion. We have to really find a place inside ourselves where we can comprehend the incomprehensible, where we can these beings are walking through walls, not because of magic, but because they understand a deeper level of physics. This is science that we maybe are a couple of 100 years or 1,000 years behind, but we do have the capacity to understand what these beings are doing, what they're capable of, because, like I said, the basic factor is consciousness. So we have to just get ourselves out of the box of limitation that we put ourselves in, and the programming and the matrix that we've trapped our social conditioning from, and realize there's so much more to us as human beings. That goes back to your first point. It's an evolution of our humanity that these interactions are calling us to wake up to.
Yeah. And in your opinion, Alan, the world, materialism and consumerism seems to be leading people on unnecessary quests for money. There's an ideology which seems to suggest that if you can get rich and if you try, even the music of our youth states kind of a get rich or die trying attitude. But the reality is that there's so much more to life than money. How do we get this message out in an admirable way that's not, something that people admire, and don't look at you like you're just woo woo in the ether, and it's a tough thing to do, isn't it?
Well, my friend Deepak Chopra said, and I think he got this quote from Bob Marley, is some people are so poor all they have is money. And
love it.
I just love that because money is what we're programmed, conditioned to do, where, that's survival. And, even if you have a lot of money, and some people, I know people with millions and a lot of people without millions, but those people, they are sometimes trapped. I had a friend who was very wealthy. He said he had golden handcuffs on because he couldn't walk away. He was actually upset at me that I was living what I wanted to do, and he was trapped in his, in these programs that make people just think that's all there is to the world is materiality, and then if you get a chance just to sit in the woods by yourself and drop into those spaces and realize that nature is talking to us, that it's not just the visible world that's talking, it's the invisible world. If you go inward in meditation, if you go into these internal states, these deep states, you realize there's an infinite source, just as much inside of you as outside of you. And that's always been just astonishing for me. How is that possible? How come no one's telling us that? And of course, there's great spiritual traditions that do talk about that, and there's been some great channels that have tapped into these other levels of awareness, and I think we're in a renaissance of spiritual knowledge, so it's coming out. You know, there's a time where you couldn't even find a health food store in a major city. Now there's Whole Foods. I mean, of course, there's problems with Whole Foods, like whole paycheck, they say, but now it's there. Yoga centers, massage, acupuncture, the things that maybe 20 years ago were not common are now everyday, ideas. Like I was talking to my friend who's a psychic, and I said, like, psychics are as important as a dentist. Like people say, who's your psychic? And not that we have to go to psychics, but occasionally if somebody with a good insight can assist us in particular avenues, and it's real. I mean, we're all psychic. I mean, I teach remote viewing, which is proof that our minds are not local, that they're part, like I said before, like that is the extraterrestrial evidence, is that the consciousness is not confined to your body. Actually, that's like another quote from Deepak Chopra is, your consciousness is not in your body, you are in consciousness. Your body's in consciousness, meaning that the field is I would say, the field is the being. The field of awareness is really what is the emanation of the human being, and the body is just one aspect of it. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's so clear the way you put it. And you mentioned Deepak Chopra, and I just have to point this out, that your friends list, they say that you are who your friends are. And your friends list reads like, just this ascended, illuminated bunch of awakened souls to the sunlight of the spirit. They're all people who benefit others just by their presence. And that goes for you as well. So it's amazing to me that you kick off this book with so many quotes by so many people with, the same gifts that you have of, explaining how this is an essential part of humanity.
Well, I sought those people out, I have to tell you. It's not like they called me up and said, oh, hey, I went to all the conferences. I, had an interview show. I still have it for 25 years on Manhattan Cable. So it's like it's been, I wouldn't say a job or a career. It's been avid interest to know more and to meet the people who I could learn from, and people like Bruce Lipton. I mean, do you know Bruce Lipton?
Not personally. I wish I did.
Well, I read an article of his, I think it was in the late 1990s, before anyone knew him. It was in this little spiritual magazine out of Washington State called The Golden Thread, and he was saying such fantastic things that I found him. I found him in Northern California. I called them up, and I said, Bruce, I want to interview you. So, I mean, I don't know if it was the first interview we ever did, but I found him. He invited me into his home. Me and my girlfriend were traveling around, and he spent 3 hours with us outlining what he's now been saying, I would say, for the last 20 years publicly. But it's because, I don't know, maybe I just have a way of tuning into new knowledge or things that excite me. Nassim Haramein is another one, like nested black holes, who else? Linda Moulton Howe, a genius in the field of ufology. Really original thinkers. I would say I'm like a talent scout. I'm looking for people who are unfolding new realities, and I seek them out. Alex Gray. Do you know the art of Alex Gray?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, is he from New York? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in upstate New York. Well, when I saw his art, it's like, wow. So I think art's a big part of it, but people presenting the new, the shock of the unknown is a famous art book. So people bringing out something that stimulates, as Joe Dispenza says, who I also know, new neural nets of awareness. These new connections, and this is also what the ETs are doing for us. When you meet a situation or an art form or a lecture by someone that is like suddenly connects new parts of yourself, new revelations, we expand. We expand to when we connect these new neural nets, I would say new awarenesses. A greater awareness, if you don't reject it, will expand our capacity to see the bigger reality. And that's what I look for. That's the excitement, is what's going to expand me? What unknown phenomena or concept will I have to stretch out of my old belief system? Because it's so easy to step into like a worldview that says, okay, now I know what it's all about. But I'm always at the edge of that wave, the edge of the envelope, looking for something I don't know. And, I don't agree with everything that comes to me. I mean, some things people say, I'm not a flat earther. People say, the earth is, I said, well, that's just, I have to say, stupid. There's people with new ideas or old ideas that think they're really excited. So I do have my judgments. I do have my, I would say, boundaries. Some people talk about the secret space program. I have yet to see evidence that we, as a country, U.S., are out in space trading with a galactic community. But there's a lot of people in the UFO field that totally believe that. I don't, because I haven't seen evidence of it. And then, of course, some people don't believe what I believe about alien abductions and we're being taken and genetically experimented with. Well, that's really far out, but somehow I believe that because I've had glimpses of those experiences. So, I'm trying to mix experience with practical knowledge, with unknown realities, with just my own little combination of what I think is plausible, possible, and also impossible. I'm willing to go to the impossible, but I also am practical in a sense. Other people might not think that, but in ways like, okay, is time travel real? Well, yeah, I think why not? Einstein has said so in his formulas. You can go back and forth in time. So I'm looking at everything that was considered science fiction, and now I'm seeing, and this is what the UFO people and the physicists are saying, what we thought was science fiction is now science fact. And that quote is from the first article that came out in 2017 about UFOs, or UAPs as they're now called. So I'm looking at it all and really excited about possibilities. I know the world doesn't look like a great place, but I think it has amazing potential. Always has, but we are in really exciting times in human history where something unknown is about to be revealed to human civilization that's going to change everything. It is bigger than a Copernican revolution. It is an awakening of who we really are as human beings on this small little blue dot in the vastness of space.
I love it. And I'm glad that you mentioned Dispenza. He's someone I look up to a lot. And if I'm not mistaken, you two studied together for many years.
Yeah. He was part of the Ramtha School of Enlightenment, and Ramtha, I mean, even though there was a lot of controversy around it, was a great teacher for me and Joe and all the people who made What the Bleep Do We Know, and thousands of other people that awakened me to this other level of reality. It's like, before I met Ramtha, who's a channel being through this woman, Jay-Z Knight, and she was out of Tacoma, now they live in Washington. But I looked at everything from a psychological perspective. That was my orientation in college. And then someone said, "Do you want to meet this woman who channels this 35,000-year-old warrior from Atlantis?" Now, that was not in my belief system back in the early 80s. And I said, she's either crazy, she's either, making it up to make a lot of money, or I thought, could it really be true? Could this thing, and I'm not saying it is true, I'm just saying that those were the possibilities. And I went because, I did hear some stuff from some audio tapes that made a lot of sense, and I thought, well, that was interesting. I'm going to check it out. And then that really just changed my whole perspective on psychology and possibilities, and I opened to the fact that maybe consciousness is multidimensional, maybe people can channel other levels of reality. So that was a big shift for me, and that's, of course, where lots of people like Joe Dispenza became part of this school, because it became a mystery school. And mystery schools are not about teaching somebody something. It's about having the experience yourself. So we'd stay blindfolded for 3 days trying to, find these things that were planted, these cards on these fences that were planted with something we wanted to create. I have to say, Joe was really good at a lot of this, stuff. And it's just great to see how he's taken those teachings and brought them way out to the world to really help thousands and thousands of people, and he's really a success. So, my orientation is a little more esoteric, a little more, out there. Joe is doing a really practical thing, waking people up to their potential. I'm going into the esoteric and saying, well, yeah, it's great. You definitely create your reality and you have the potential to do that. But what can we bring into our reality that we don't know? So you can create, and this was the whole discussion around The Secret. It's great to create what you want, but how do we bring into our field of awareness what we don't even know exists? That's the challenge I'm looking at. So that's the new realities. Yes, I want a new car, a new house. Those are amazing things to create. You want healing, you want all this, but what's beyond the known is what I'm looking for, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. And I adore the mystery schools. I think that, it's amazing what they offer. And it's no wonder that many of these, historically speaking, in the past, many of these secret societies and mystery schools had to remain kind of off the beaten path and out of sight of the mainstream, because in the past there was a lot of darkness, and the elites, if you want to call them that, or the people in control, wanted to maintain control. We see that still today, but I don't think, as you said, we're definitely vibrating at a better level now. And but I adore that you guys do that kind of work, and I also want to appreciate that you don't seem to lose your light or your, for fame and fortune. There's a lot of people that do, and this is something that it's a phenomenon. Just being around you, as I said before. Something I want to ask you, Alan, is this psycho-spiritual awareness and how it relates to, you mentioned Lou Elizondo, and I've noticed that he, I've had some conversations with him and people close to him, and
you have.
yeah, and
right.
am disgusted by the attacks. And I don't like when anyone is attacked in this field, no matter what their belief. But why is it that there is so much attacking? And this is something that you do not do, but you seem a little bit more enlightened than that. But there does, I mean, this guy was really attacked by mainstream ufology.
I know. Well, ufology is like any other field. There's people who like each other, don't like. There's jealousy. I mean, can you introduce me to Lou, actually?
I can do my best, absolutely.
All right. But, I like Lou Elizondo. I think he is really one of the heroes that are standing up for truth. And he's a very smart person, and he does talk around subjects sometimes. If you ask him a question, he will not answer you directly and he plants seeds, and he is leaving breadcrumbs, as he says, about what the truth is, because maybe he's, held in by some NDA. But people have attacked him, and it's unfortunate because their ego, like, I guess I don't really want to name names, because then I get attacked if I name names. But there's people who think that they know what's going on in the UFO field, and they call themselves authorities. And if someone comes out of nowhere, like Elizondo did in 2017, and suddenly has more answers than they do, it's ego based. It doesn't matter what field you're in. People, think they're the top. I mean, that's why this book, Making Contact, and the series I'm doing, MakingContactSeries.com, is a multi-perspective approach. Like I'm saying, there's not one person. I've been in this field for maybe 30 years, listening to all the greats: Bud Hopkins, John Mack, Whitley Strieber. I mean, I've sat at the feet of these people because they had more knowledge than I do. But no, not even they had the complete understanding of what's really going on in the UFO field. They are looking for answers as much as anyone else, and this is why there's 12 different essays in this book trying to talk about separate areas of truth. So why are people attacked? Because they are not expanded enough to admit that there might be something they don't know. That's my best answer for why someone would attack someone like Elizondo. Recently in the New York Post, they did this whole takedown, and they didn't even get their facts right. So, he's a little bit hard to pin down, Elizondo, but he has pushed this movement forward, which is like the movement being the government disclosing the fact that we're not alone in the universe, more than anyone in the last, I would say, 50 years. So I would say, it's ego. If you ask me simply, why do people attack other people? Because their sense of authority is being threatened.
Yeah, good answer. And it does seem that nothing good ever comes from these attacks, or from ego, or from fear or anger. And in what I like about Lou is he says everything in a very 3D way, but he's talking about 5D things, and some of it has to be left out, not only because of the position he held, but as you mentioned, the NDAs that I'm sure are still in effect, but he has, and people that he is close with, such as Tom DeLonge and others at TTSA, I believe that they have kind of looked back on these and verified some of these ancient myths and religious beliefs. And without saying the answers are there, the answers are there.
Some of the answers are there. I don't know. I think the world is a mystery that keeps unfolding. And, yeah, there are definitely awakened beings who have reached the level of truth, awareness, ascension even. I think that is definitely a possibility, that you can transform your physical body into a light essence when you own the human experience, which means like, and this is something Ramtha used to teach because he called himself an ascended master, and I don't know what you know of that, but there's people who have been able, I believe, and you read this in the ancient Egyptian work or the Tibetan rainbow body or even the Castaneda work I've studied, that you can leave this planet with your body. I know that's a little out there for some people, by turning it into light, by igniting the biophotonic potentials within the cells that will transmute your body into a light essence. Now, that's just a belief. That's not my experience yet, although I've had moments of something like that. But I think that's our ultimate destiny, is to transform our Earth bodies into stars or higher multidimensional vehicles, ultra-celestials, if you want to call that. So when we can do that, we get off the wheel of incarnation and we awaken. So there are great beings, and we're waking up, and this is the time of a planetary ascension. I'm sure you're familiar with those terms, right?
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up the light. And, you know, there are so many catchphrases and buzzwords these days. YOLO, you know, you only live once. And I don't think that gives you a right to live recklessly and destroy the temple in which the light dwells. And also, I want to touch on and ask you, Alan, that's not necessarily the case, you know, that we only live once. There's such a thing as old souls.
Well, definitely not in my experience. I mean, I don't know how true reincarnation is, but I believe that, I mean, I have glimpses of other lifetimes. I mean, maybe it's an overlay, but I think whatever the energy is, you know, energy is not created or destroyed, so whatever energy is in this body has been in other bodies, and I don't know why that's so hard to believe. I mean, millions of people have had glimpses of other lifetimes. I mean, I've heard even spiritual teachers saying, well, you know, you're just tuning into the collective consciousness, but I don't know. If you I use this analogy when I'm giving lectures, you know, if your cell phone breaks, it doesn't mean then you stop getting the calls, the signals, you know. If it's like we're receiving, your brain and your body is receiving the essence of who you are from outside of you, right? So we're always picking up the signal of this soul frequency, and other bodies, this is what channeling exists. It's like we've had other bodies that picked up the same frequency or less evolved. I think every lifetime's an evolution. So I've remembered my lifetimes, or maybe they were fantasy projections, but they seem very real. Like, you know, my last lifetime was not a picnic, you know, in the concentration camps of Germany or Austria or wherever that was, Poland. And I'm really still affected. I mean, maybe everyone is because they're so awful, these pictures, but pictures or films about that time, there's something that just, well, it makes me cry, actually. And what is tears? Tears are your soul speaking, tears of joy, tears of sadness. It's like that is the language of the soul. So it's like the soul is eternal, and so these earth bodies can be eternal if you raise the frequency, and I think that's possible. But the essence of who you are is not in your body. So yeah, there are old souls who have had many, many lifetimes. I think we're all the same soul age, but it's how much experience have you had in the incarnate form allows the soul to gain wisdom. And you know, we're here to, like I said before, own the human experience, which means you are at peace with all things in this dimension. And then I think we graduate to the next level. But yeah, I mean, and maybe we've lived on other planets and other dimensions. And I remember worlds that were just pure color and vibration. And, you know, those are other vague experiences, but we're so conditioned when we come into this world to forget all that. And there's a book by Ian Stevenson talking about children remembering their past lives and having scars on or like marks on their bodies from these other lives. So I believe, that's my belief system, is that we are reincarnated, and that's the ongoing cycle that helps the soul evolve from lifetime to lifetime. One of my favorite books is called The Red Lion. Have you read that book?
I have not.
Maria Zappis. Actually, Brian Scott, who does a great service on YouTube, read the whole book, but it's about someone who remembers his lifetime after life. It's a fiction book, but it is so well written, and it's about how maybe in some lifetimes we weren't such great people, but because we're here to learn and evolve and build up our soul nature, then we learn from the experiences. Well, even in this lifetime, we're learning about how to build character and qualities. So that's why we're here, to learn, evolve, and build up, a strength of awareness and I would say substantiability on a soul level. And meeting the unknown can do that. Meeting these beings or having new experiences, or people have all sorts of experiences because that's what they've chosen on some level. Some people say, oh yeah, why did you choose to be a starving child there? And it's like, well, I don't know why I chose to be like in the concentration camps of Germany last lifetime, but it was definitely an evolution. It wasn't pleasant, but in awareness to what humans are possible and what, deep essence lies within each of us. So I don't know if that's an excuse or whatever, but getting back to your question, yes, we have had other, in my belief, worldview. We've lived many thousands. It's like each lifetime's like a breath, So thousands of lifetimes, millions maybe, from the beginning of time to this moment. It's infinite, the source of the soul's experience.
I like that. And you touched on something. I really liked what you said about the tears. You touched on something that happened to me today, this morning, which was very interesting. It was a beautiful morning. I was driving, and I just saw a child on a bicycle with a helmet on, going to school, and all the cars stopped for him to cross the street, and him waving an acknowledgement, and it kind of brought some tears to my eyes. Just the beauty of life, and
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and at the time, it got me emotional. It brought some tears to my eyes, and my first reaction was like, man, what's wrong with you? But as you said, maybe that's what's right with me. And
Absolutely, that's what's right with you. I have a friend who cries at everything, and it's so beautiful. Cries at all the beautiful things. And that's you on that little bike with that helmet. That's why it touches you, because that's you, that's been you, that is you, and that's like the innocence of us, There's a great poem that you remind me of by E.E. Cummings. Do you know E.E. Cummings, the American poet?
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Who are you, this little eye, 8 or 9 years old, staring at the window at the gold of some November sunset and thinking, if day has to become night, this is a beautiful way."
Oh, that's nice. And you mentioned art, and poetry is a form of art. I think that a lot of people are broadcasting their gifts in different ways, and this is all, it's all part of it, isn't it? We need each other. We're all on the same team as humans, and that's why I hate to see a lot of the infighting that takes place. There's times where I too am judgmental, and I'm like, oh, that sounds far-fetched, or this sounds completely out there. And then I remember that I also have some pretty far-fetched and out there ideas. And it's something unique that you have. You have a gift of talking to people as if you've known them all your life. And I appreciate that. I do have some questions as far as these hotspots that you're very familiar with, hotspots like Sedona or the Uinta Basin of Utah, and there's many others. What is taking place in these hotspots, in your opinion, Alan? Oh, did I lose you? I think I might have lost you.
Oh no, I'm here.
Oh,
Okay,
great.
just repeat that question for a second.
Oh, yeah, sorry. My question is, what is taking place in areas that are considered hotspots of paranormal activity or the other realm, areas that you're very familiar with, areas like Sedona or the Uinta Basin of Utah, where the old Bigelow Ranch was? There seems to be areas, not only in the United States, but around the world, where more seems to happen, much like in Sedona. What is taking place in these areas, in your opinion?
Well, I think there are time-space vortexes that connect us to other realms. Like definitely Skinwalker Ranch, like you mentioned, Sedona. There are places that, we think we understand what's really going on here, and we don't. We don't understand that the dimensional doorways that are here. I mean, I think this is what the ETs access these other realms to go in and out of dimensions. So I think there's so much more is possible, and as science evolves, they'll realize that there are wormholes. There are natural wormholes. There are natural doorways, and I think some of the great temples, even the churches of Europe, were built on top of these PowerPoint sites, and they can be positive, they can be negative, but they're places that accelerate the higher consciousness. Like if you're in one of these high energy places, sometimes you get downloads of other levels of reality. You get downloads of higher consciousness. You get things awaken in the human mind in an easier fashion because you're in a place of less density, higher vibrations, let's call it that. Some cities are very dense. Some even places on the planet are dense because of the energetic formations. We have to understand energy in a whole new way as part of the landscape of our reality. So that's key to who we are, what we're all about. So does it make sense?
I love it.
That's
Yeah.
And Sedona is a place I love. Sedona is a place that seems to awaken people to these vortexes of consciousness, these vortexes of reality. So, yes, it's really, really fantastic to be in those kinds of places because you feel uplifted. You feel an intensity and you feel a transformation. So, yes.
Yeah. And something else I appreciate that you say, which Bigelow has said as well, that they're already here. That really makes, you mentioned that in the book, that really makes an impression on me. They're already here. We don't have to look for them. And I think that's really cool. As we wrap things up, let's tell listeners again where they can find you and what you have coming up tomorrow.
Right. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for all your great questions and your real genuine interest in discovering more parts of the unknown. That's what I've devoted myself to, and I appreciate meeting people that go into those realms, because most people are just have their head down towards their cell phone and they're not interested in what's the bigger picture. So I'm exploring this in my book, The Making Contact: The New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence. You can find that on Amazon or any Barnes & Noble. It's pretty much all over the world. It's been selling well. And I've made a series, an online series based on the book and based on lots of the people in the book, like Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, some of the real experts in the field I respect. And this series is starting tomorrow, June 2nd, 2022. You go to makingcontactseries.com and register, sign up, and it'll be the next 4 weeks, 4 Thursdays in June, with Danny Sheehan and Steve Bassett and Robert Salas tomorrow. And then next week I have Carolyn Corey, who's talking about her film Tear in the Sky. The following week, June 16th, is Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber. Kamara Jones is another ET artist. And then the final week is June 23rd, which we investigate people who are claiming to come here from other worlds, star seeds they're called. So that's the kind of overview of the series and Making Contact. So that's where I'm really trying to get this word out here, and I appreciate this interview, to turn people on to the fact that we're not alone and that this amazing unfoldment of a new reality is at our doorstep. We're at the threshold of a new civilization, a new realm of being for humanity. When we wake up to the fact that there are others here, I think it changes us biologically, technologically, sociologically, on all realms of our awareness. We start to unfold into a greater possibility. And that's what I'm looking forward to. There's nothing to fear about the unknown. It's something to welcome because it is our evolution as human beings. So thank you for the opportunity to share all that. I appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The man behind Making Contact, the epic book preparing for the new realities of extraterrestrial existence, Alan Steinfeld. Definitely go to makingcontactseries.com if you are interested in seeing the amazing work he's doing tomorrow, and definitely check out his New Realities series and pick up his book, Making Contact by Alan Steinfeld. What a guy, what a conversation. I knew it wouldn't disappoint. One of the brightest minds, in my opinion, on the forefront of the UAP phenomenon. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off.